In 1972, after DDT was found in coho salmon and Chinook salmon in Lake Michigan, a friend of mine who was a biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Service said, gee, we really ought to look at coastal fish to see if they contain contaminants. And we had fish shipped from the Atlantic Gulf and Pacific coasts, and I personally went down and collected striped bass here in the river. And I told Francis Kuhn, who was the chief chemist at the testing place, besides DDT and BHC and dieldrin and endrin, look for something called polychlorinated biphenyls. And he said, well, no one's ever done that for fish before in this hemisphere. I said, well, do it and describe the protocols in case there are any questions. And the Hudson River striped bass were loaded with PCBs.
PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, an industrial chemical, had been found to cause cancer in animals and were suspected of doing the same in people. PCBs were found in almost all species of Hudson River fish, including the commercial fisherman's most lucrative catch, the striped bass. New York State warned people about the danger.
I remember the day the story ran in the New York Times that told the world that the Hudson River is contaminated with PCBs and probably most fish.
Until the PCBs issue came out in the paper, I'd pull my boats in here and I'd have people, 2 lines, standing in line. People waiting to get the fish off my boat. They put that in the paper, and I'm telling you, and I'd say inside of a week, I had one customer, he was an old Russian, he couldn't read or write. And that's the only guy ever showed up after that. They destroyed us.
7 months after the warning, the state barred commercial fishing in the Hudson for most species of fish. To this day, striped bass caught in the Hudson are considered contaminated with PCBs. They're illegal to sell commercially. The shad are considered safer, thanks to their eating habits. They don't feed during their migration, so they avoid the PCBs that have moved up the food chain.
It was somebody far away you've never seen, competing in a field that had nothing to do with you, drove you out of business with a chemical you never heard of. Never smelled it, never saw it coming.
PCBs were first manufactured in this country in the early 1930s. First a company called Swan, and then Monsanto took over Swan. And they were used for a wide variety of industrial applications. When Monsanto would manufacture PCBs, they called them Arachlor. That was the trade name. General Electric would get them, they would baptize them anew and call them Pyranol. And it was like one of these shell games you might run into on 42nd Street. So I knew that there was something called Pyranol upriver because I had a list of what they were discharging. I had no idea that Pyranol were really PCBs. And I had no idea where they were coming from. I thought maybe there was some nut in Jersey City was letting the things loose.
Turns out they were coming from 2 General Electric plants on the upper Hudson. For about 30 years, up to 1977, GE discharged over 1 million pounds of PCBs into the river, the last few of those years under permit from New York State. Their discovery in the fish meant more than the loss of a living for the fishermen. PCBs don't break down naturally. A potentially cancer-causing chemical was now in the food chain.
Were you aware